Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for attending today's IBM Middleware User Community Ask the Expert session. I'm Kelsey Tipshirney and I'll be moderating today's session. Our topic is upgrading Omnibus Probes. We have all phone lines in listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session towards the end. However, feel free to ask a question anytime during the presentation using that questions window that's located in your dashboard panel, or feel free to raise your hand and you can ask your question live. So tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You'll receive a follow-up email with a link to download the replay, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. And now we'll go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. We have joining us Jim Hutchinson. He's a senior software engineer with IBM Cloud. Thanks, Jim, for joining us today. I'll now turn the floor over to you.
That's great, thanks. So today we're going to basically walk through doing the upgrading of the Omnibus Probes on 8.1 from, well, because 7.4 is a different installation manager, we have to use basically the install manager for 8.1, so it's going to be a new installation, so you're not really upgrading. We've got Christina and Phil and Fadley from L3 on the call as well to do the Q&A session. So if you've got any deep questions, then feel free to ask them towards the end of the session. Is probably best. Okay, so I'm Jim Hutchinson and I've been working with Netcool Omnibus for a few years now. So I'm just going to walk through this presentation and then do a quick demonstration of the commands used to manage the probes essentially, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. Okay. So as I mentioned, the main difference between Netcool Omnibus 7.4 and Netcool Omnibus 8.1 is the install manager or installation manager. It's best to use the user's home directory as the root directory for the Netcool Omnibus, and that way you keep the install manager in the same full path as Netcool Omnibus. And you can move that around, or you can keep everything in one place rather than having it distributed amongst different file systems. So the recommendation is to use a user's home directory and set that home directory to be the Omnibus directory, or have the Omnibus directory or Netcool home within that directory. You can also install as root, and in that case the path will be separate from the IBM installation path, the default installation path. As mentioned earlier, you have to basically install the product anew, so you have to migrate the data from 7.4 to 8.1 during the Omnibus side of things, and then again for the probes you'll have to migrate the rules, etc., over the rules and props over. So if you're keeping the same system, make sure there's enough disk space to hold both the 7.4 and the 8.1 installation. NCOID was reintroduced I think in 7.4, and it's still available in the 8.1 area as well. It doesn't actually list that much in terms of the probes, but what it does list is all the supporting packages related to Netcool Omnibus. There's two formats. There's basically the default format, which basically gives you the fixed pack level. So in this case it's fixed pack 10, and then if you do the verbose mode -V as the option, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff which is quite hard to review using a terminal session, so it's best to put the data into a temporary file and view it in a temporary file. So for the actual probe packages, you can download them from the IBM support site's Passport Advantage, as usual. One of the main differences between it and the 7.4 packages is that they're .zip files, So it's a package of all the probes. It's not just one platform, it's multi-platform packages, and it may or may not contain all the platforms. So you have to check the release notice to understand which platforms are supported, but the actual probe package is all held in one package, one zip file. The easiest way to find them, I found, is using Google, and you just search for IBM release and then the probe name, for instance, JDBC probe, and you should come up with the package within the first couple of listings within Google. In this case, I've done a search for the SCOM 2012 probe, and in there you can see it will have a release notice item within the browser, and you just click on that and it will then show you the full page from the support site, and in there you can check for the V81 packages. In this case you can see the part number down towards the bottom, CN39QEN. Okay, so when you look at the web page, you'll see towards the right there's a second section, and in that section it tells you the supported platforms. In this case it's a Windows platform zone supported for the SCOM 2012 probe. So be careful when you're deploying or deciding to deploy that you have the right platform for the probe. So the way you install probes in Netcool Omnibus 8.1 is using the installation manager. So you can do it dynamically using the GUI, the IM tool, and you can point off to a I think it's a proxy or the actual support site and download via the GUI, which is probably the easiest way to do, but most customers, or I guess most of the time, you're going to be using the command line interface. This is called IMCL. It's fairly straightforward. It has a interactive mode as well as a non-interactive mode, a command line mode, and these are the simple or the most used commands that you're going to end up using if you're doing a probe installation. So the first one is the list available packages, and if you pointed to the actual zip file you downloaded, and here we've downloaded a socket probe package, that will then show you the package within the zip file. So it's a good way of checking to see what's in that zip file and what version it is, just to confirm it. And as you can see, it's made up of the basically the class name of the probe with the version details at the end. Then you can use that exact text within the install command. So with the install command, you have to specify the -C for the console mode, and then install, and then the name of the package you want to install, and then the repository you're going to be using to install that package. And that's it. It's a simple command line interface. You then have to accept the package, accept the licensing, confirm the installation area, and off it goes. It will install it.
And we did get a question in the chat. From Claudia, does the installation manager GUI require an internet connection?
For the method I'm showing here, you don't need an internet connection. So the idea here is you download the package and then you can move this zip file around within the organization. So for deployment, you could have a directory full of zip files and then just to deploy using the command line interface. Yep, hopefully that answers it.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep. You can also remove packages fairly straightforwardly using an install and an uninstall command. The easiest way to do that is basically check the listings of all the packages installed. So you can use the IMCL command again, list install packages. It's easier to use the -features and -long, but then that creates a command listing which is quite difficult to read on a screen. So the easiest method is to use awk and then just pick out two of the fields, field 3 and field 4. So if you basically put this command in a text file somewhere, it's much easier, or maybe create a small script to issue this command for yourselves. It makes it a lot easier to read the output. And then you can use the, well, basically in this case, it will list out, if you grep for the socket, well, just grep for socket, you'll see the probe listed, and this is the example of the listing of the output from the IMCL list install packages. And then you just basically run the IMCL command with the uninstall, and then you have to work out what the full name is, but it's basically the class path again. So you've got COM, IBM, Tivoli, Omnibus, integrations, and that's fairly standard. And then you just pop in the name that came out via the list install packages. It doesn't give much interaction on this. It's an automatic uninstall, so it just says I've installed it, uninstalled it. So there's no confirmation. It's just run it and go. With a probe server, you probably want to disable the rolling back, otherwise you'll end up with a building up of zip files within the install manager directory. And the simple way of doing this is using this method here. So you basically disable rollback within the probe server's installation manager. Again, you can use the -C command for the console. It will then pop up the choices, and you basically just pick these choices. So you go to Preferences, choose the files for rollback. You deselect the Save Files option, then Apply, and then return to the main menu. And then from then on, there's no rollback feature. So for probes, you tend not to need it. It's not a useful feature. You just need to install and uninstall. So what probes are available on Netcool Omnibus 8.1? There are a couple of new ones that are only available. That's the socket Java and the GLF Java. It's recommended that the native probes are migrated to the Java versions, or the non-native probes, because the native probes won't be supported, won't be GA released again. They'll be supported in terms of test fix, but not in future releases as far as I'm aware. There is actually a URL which lists all the available 8.1 probes. It's given here, and obviously you can go to the probes documentation to see what probes are available within the product family, within the integrations family. So there are some probes that aren't available, and these are basically a few of the products dropped off the support portfolio due to issues with vendors, etc. So like the Ericsson probes, you might need to either find a generic alternative, or else have a statement of work obtained from the IBM account team. Basically, if you're doing a major upgrade, it's best to talk to the IBM account team about which probes need to be have additional work done on them, rather than just downloaded from the IBM Passport Advantage site. Okay, so these are some of the replacement probes you have. So if you have a really old system, then you might still be using the ODBC probe, and the natural upgrade is the JDBC probe. There are variances there, so you'll probably have to do some pre-deployment work before you basically can't just go in and upgrade it. You'll have to work out what needs to be done in order to use the JDBC probe. Basically, there's a new name for the XML probe, and it's just basically called the message bus probe. So in 8.1, you'll be using the message bus probe, but it's basically the same probe with enhancements to it. And then for the generic 3GPP probe with version 3.2.0, that was replaced by an unversioned version of the probe, which includes a option to set the 3.2 versioning on the 3GPP interface, but it also supports up to 7, I think 7.1. For the Howie probes, there's been quite some changes there. So you might, if you haven't used, well, if you haven't installed the probes recently, then you'll find there's a whole new suite of probes available. So we now use this naming convention, so they all tend to be U2000 probes. The MML probe is still there, but for the M2000 and U2000, we use this 3GPP probe, and then for the general Howie 2000, U2000 server, it's the TMF probe, essentially the U2000 Corba probe, and then we still have the XML JMS version of the probe available as well. One of the issues we're seeing with the 8.1 installation manager is that when you install a new probe, it might not list all the supporting packages it's installed. You can do a minus version these days, and it should include the versions of the supporting packages, but when you do the listing using the IMCL command, it's not shown there. But the newer probes do actually list what versions it's picking up in terms of supporting packages. But for this example, I've installed 3 probes, and it has maybe 5 or 6 supporting packages, but you can't see any of those there. So just be aware of that when you're doing the listings.
We did get one question, Jim, from Tomas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think you already covered this just as he was asking it. What about the NMS 2000 probe?
NMS? I think we'll save that one till later because I don't know. Maybe Fadley can check that one out. Yeah, I think that's, I'm trying to remember who's the vendor for that one, but I think it's one of those ones where the vendor's changed. It might have changed name.
Okay, I'll save that one for the end. And then he also asked about the socket probe, and you already covered that the socket probe has the socket Java probe now.
That's right, yeah. So with the GLF and the socket probe, it's best to move to the Java versions, as there won't be any GA releases of the native probes, although the native probes are still there. They're not being removed. But you're probably better off asking for the latest test fix patch, I think, from memory. Okay, so within the probes README, it should tell you which of the supporting packages there are. So in this case, it's showing that the non-native probe is required. So ideally, when you do an install, make sure you've installed the latest supporting package as well as the main probe package, and you tend to do it afterwards as well. It's best to do it after installing the probes. And again, they can be found on the IBM support site using Google. They're found on the IBM support site, but you can use Google to find them using the IBM space release and then the name of the package you want to look for. So after we actually install the supporting packages, you actually then see them in this listing. So in the IMCL list install packages, you can now see I've installed additionally the Corba framework 1.8, the non-native. These are all latest packages. Non-native, in fact, it's version release 20 in that case, and then the common transformer release 8, and then the transport module release 13, which is probably out of date now. But once you've installed the supporting packages, then magically appear within this listing. And that's it really. That's basically what we have in terms of the presentation side of things. Hopefully that wasn't too long. That's a legal disclaimer apparently we have to show.
We did get one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it safe to use the existing 7.x probes with 8.1 Omnibus? When are we required to upgrade?
Say that again. I missed what the main thrust of that was.
I think they're asking if it's if you can connect the 7.x probe to an 8.1 object server. And yes, you certainly can.
Oh yeah. But yeah, in terms of the object server connectivity, I don't think it's changed at all. In fact, you could probably connect to any object server using the 8.1 probes. I don't think there's anything special in the probe API, unless Fadley knows of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing that you're probably gonna get is if there's some features that's in 8.1 that's not available in 7.3, you won't be able to use those features. Like, for example, if we decide to start using a new option that's in libOPL, and it might be available only in 8.1 and not in 7.x.
But the probe
so
should, the probe should still send the data. I can't think
right. It's kind of like those functions like split. It might be only available on 8.1 but not on 7.x. So I'm just saying that sometimes people look at the documentation for the probe and it shows up as being a function that you could use, but it doesn't work. You get a syntax error in the 7.x probe. So that's something to look out for. But in terms of just pure data, it's just SQL.
But I think if you're migrating up, you shouldn't see any problems with migrating up, I don't think. If you're moving the rules files from 7.4 to 8.1, I can't think of anything that's been left out that causes any problem. It's all been added, isn't it? So it's only if you're moving the rules files down to a lower version, you get a problem.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I did want to mention that if you have probes that are still on 7.x environments, we did have the end of support announcement for Omnibus 7.4. So Omnibus 7.4 goes out of support at the end of December 2018 is the end of support date. So there are going to be support extensions available for purchase if you still have older probes that you would want to run on 7.x for a period of time, but we would suggest, upgrading before the end of support.
Yeah. So I was just going to quickly show the browser side of things and then do the command line, and then we can open up to Q&A. Yep. For a bit more Q&A, I should say, rather than anything. So great. If I just, this is like a standard browser, it's just Google. If you just put in IBM release and just pick a probe out the top of my head, so we did the SCOM 2012, an example. And you should just see there's a release notice there, so you just pull that out. Then if you look at this page, this is the page which basically tells you about the product. So here you can see it about the version 8.1, and there's the part number. So for all the probes, there'd just be one part number rather than with 7 and 7.3 or 7.x. There's always multiple part numbers here. For Windows, you can see there's only one platform there. But the main thing to look at, not just that, but look at this side of things. It says operating system, it says Windows. So if I then do it for another probe, like I suppose JTPC, just take one from the audience, shouldn't I? There should be another release notice. So this is one of the easiest ways of finding it if you're in a hurry. And there you see you just get one part number, but within the 7.4 you get loads of part numbers. And that's because this package here will contain all the packages. Basically, it contains all the binaries for the different platforms in that package. And if you want to check the operating system, if it doesn't have the 7.4 in there, you can check the operating system on the right-hand side panel. I'm not sure how accurate these modified dates are, but they do give you an indication of when it was released. Sometimes those are refreshed, so it doesn't always indicate a new release. The other way of checking the releases is looking at the manual. So in the summary section for in this case, the generic log file probe, you have a link off to the site, and there you go. You've got the link off to the release notice, which we just looked at, or one of the ones we just looked at. And again, the operating system's defined there. You can see it's got the main operating systems. It's got AIX, Linux, Solaris, and Windows, and CentOS as well. And the part numbers there, which you can put into Passport Advantage to find the package and download. I think that was all. Yep. So that's the GUI done. And then I'm just going to walk through the commands we used in the session earlier. So just give me a second. Need to readjust the screen. It's not doing it. There you go. So one of the commands we run was this one. So that's the sort of listing you'll get if you've got a probe server. So it's quite a long listing. And you can see there, these are the class names of the probe which you'd put in to remove it. And then you've got the version details at the tail end of the line. So here you can see what's the SICK agent? Is that that's the install manager, I think. That's the Omnibus core. In fact, I'll do an NCO ID just so you get your bearings. This is a FixPack 13. As you can see, it gets a bit cluttered with loads of probes in there.
I think you already mentioned too, Jim, that the versions of probes, you always see a 1 dot in front of it. I get a lot of questions on the actual version that's there. So for example, non-native base, it says 1.20.0.1. The actual version is 20. There's just a 1 dot in front of all the actual version numbers.
Yeah, I think it's I Fadley would know, but I think that's the release, isn't it? The second digit is the release.
Yeah.
That is correct. But for probe and gateways, you should start with 1 dot in front of the version. And after the 1 dot, the next number coming after the 1 dot is the major release version.
Yeah, so that's Cobol Framework 8 version or release 8, yeah. And that's the sub version of it.
Yeah, and the sub version, if after the major version number, it is not 0. That means the major version is GA release. But if it's more than 0, then it is a test fix release of the probe or gateway.
I don't think I've got any test fixes on this, though. I don't think.
Yeah.
Unless Nokia NetAct is one.
So for the NetAct probe, that means the probe that is installed in this system is version 5 with revision 8.
Okay, fair enough. So, let me just do a couple more commands. That's not going to do select now, is it? So there's a long version of that command as well, which you'll see is pretty dire in terms of its presentation. But then you can use the awk command to basically trim down the real required columns. And that makes it much easier to read. It's more human readable. But it's the same detail. It should be the same detail. So NetAct is listed, but it's not given the sub-revisions, I don't think. Okay, so that's the 3 main commands. We did NCOID. I'll do the verbose one in the screen, and you'll see how cluttered that is. So generally speaking, it's better to push all this data into the into a text file. But you can see it has all the library versions within Netcool Omnibus, which is very useful for checking the details of the system. So to run the rollback, I'll just show you the interaction of that. So you can do that command, the imcl C command, and you can just get this little command line interface. And then for rollback, you go to Preferences, and it was option 3 for file rollback. Then you can just turn off the saved files. So if you just hit 1, it takes off the X, and then if you hit 1 again, it puts it back, I think. There you go. And then you just have to apply it and go. So A, and then return, and then exit. Okay, so that's how the command line interface works. I was also going to quickly show you how to do the installation of a couple of probes. It's probably quite nice to see. This is a heartbeat probe. That's basically what you get if you do the list available packages. So within that presentation, we showed you what the text was, but we showed it separately. But as you can see, it's just it just basically does a new line and shows you. So then when you issue the install command, you can just basically use that whole string. Although you don't need the whole string, you only need up to the end of the heartbeat. So when you actually issue the command, it goes into the command line interface. You have to accept the licensing conditions. It looks for the packages, it tells you what it's found. Then you basically just install it, and it does a little percentage thing. That one's a fairly small package, so it's fairly quick. I think I've got a slightly bigger one. There's 2 in there, wasn't there? So what's that I'm going to remove afterwards? Oh yeah, I was going to do a listing. Yeah, just show the listing. So if you're looking for a specific package within a list, use the same list install packages command, but you just basically use grep to grep out the detail. If you want to install the HP on probe, for example, it's also in that directory. You see it's there. That's the listing of it. Then basically use that text in the command. You can see it there. And then again, we're just using the same repository. So each time we're specifying the repository name. And again, just walk through this. Again, see it's fairly quickly. It's not like the old COI DE. It's a lot quicker. And again, just check it's installed using the grep command. Saves you having to search for it. And then I was going to quickly show a uninstall, just to show you how easy that is as well compared to the COI DE version. So you don't really get much feedback on that one, but it's basically uninstalled it. And I know that because if you put in the command, the list, it will not be there. There you go. Okay, so that's basically all I wanted to quickly show you through for the practical demonstration. So I'll open it up for questions now. Any further questions?
One more question. Are gateways upgraded the same as probes?
Yeah, so the gateways, which is covered in another exciting presentation, basically we're using the same the install manager is a generic install manager, so the gateways will have the same zip packages. It has the same format as well. So if we go to the search again, we can search for the gateway. So it's essentially the same packaging. Is the short answer. And there you go, you get the same detail. So the operating system is listed. Do they list the... so it's not quite so clear which package to use there for 8.1.
We have another session for gateways next week, another Ask the Expert session.
Yep. I think I picked the wrong package. I'll try this one. Yeah. There you go. That's probably a better one to use, isn't it? There you go. So yeah, it should be the same. I was wondering why it's out. It's because it's the scripts. So they must have created a new thing for the scripts. But yeah, the format should be the same for the probes and the gateways. Is the short answer, yeah. And then the versions or the platforms it's supported on is listed there. Yeah. So yeah, the simplest way to install the integrations is using Passport Advantage, download them, get them already on the test system, and then deploy them once you're happy with them on the test system using the same zip files. If you're interested in the internals of these things, you can unzip them, and I can show you quickly if that's okay. If we've got enough time. HB. So if you just unpack one of these files, I need to go up a directory. So if you unpack them, there's a README, which is quite interesting. That's where you get all your details about what supporting packages they require and the version history. So I think that's like the description.txt in the old packages. So you can see here the usual comments. It goes about how to install. It does a quick start and a revision history, and if there's any dependencies. But for this particular probe, there's very little dependencies. But then if you look at the directory, I think this is where it keeps all the files. It's a jar file. Oh, native, isn't it?
Right.
There you go. So it's in the native directory. And there you can see which, if you're not quite sure whether the packaging was correct in terms of the listing of supported platforms, you can check the native directory and just see all these zip files there. And there you can see AIX, Linux, that's ZDOS, isn't it? And then Red Hat, and then Solaris. So that's all the packages it uses.
And this is the directory where they keep all the dependencies as well.
That's right, yeah, everything's in there. So we supply as one whole zip file, so you don't have to remember to have the right. There's no more worrying about whether you've got the right platform package or reading the name to spot the platform package. You just have everything in one zip file. That's what's fairly neat. But you don't have to unzip it with the IMC out. You don't have to unzip it. You install it straight from the zip. So with all the commands, we're just using that file name as the repository. So I can show you some of the probes. Basically, everything's the same as usual. So they're all links to the different wrapper scripts. 7.4 was also 64-bit. So the way they store the probes is that they put them in different areas. So the old 32 bits are kept in the original Linux or the platform specific directory. So you'll see here all the binaries for the 32 bits. but you'll hide the 64-bit. Is there a 64-bit ping probe? Can never remember. Doesn't look like there was. Anybody know I suppose the M-trap probe, isn't it? It would be the next one.
Yeah.
MT-trap-D definitely has a 64-bit.
Yeah. So if you're just looking for the 64-bit version of the binary, it's just hidden up in a different directory. So there you go. So it's in the so that's the default one. So it'll be in the NC Home Omnibus platform, then platform. So it's platform, and then Probe 64. So it's the Word platform, and then the platform itself, and then Probe 64. Let me just list that one as well. See what we got in there. So that's all the 64 bits. And you can see there you have to use a different M file if you're doing any of the native. If you want to add things to the native probe, you have to use a platform or 64-bit specific M file. While there'll be another one in the 32 directory if you wanted to add some variables like Netcool home directory, for instance. They're not always created. You have to create those yourselves, the M files sometimes, if you want to add stuff to it. Okay, so I'll open up to a bit more questions. Any other questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions. First, Audley was going to give an update on the NMS 2000 probe. Do you have that information, Audley?
Sorry, I was on mute. So for NMS 2000 probe, this probe was deprecated quite some time ago with the introduction of the probe extension package on Nokia NMS system. So what a probe extension package meant is it's basically an extension of the socket probe rules file to process some specific attributes from a specific EMS. So if you look at the legacy NMS 2000 probe, it is basically a basic telnet probe. So it requires event using telnet connection to the Nokia NMS system. So this can also be made by using the generic socket probe. So the support direction from what our development team have decided on is to introduce the rules fast extension on top of the current socket probe to support Nokia NMS system. So with the introduction of the probe extension package, the legacy Nokia NMS probe has been deprecated. So yeah, I hope this answered the question.
Okay, thanks, Badley. We also had another question from Tomas about what is the difference between the socket and the socket Java probe.
Okay, so socket probe is a legacy probe which is supported in Omnibus 7.4, but for Omnibus 8.1 and onward, it should be replaced with the socket Java probe. So as seen in how the probe is being named, the socket Java probe is based on Java technologies, while the socket probe is a native probe which is written in C. But at this point of time, we only declare support on socket Java probe in Omnibus 8.1 because it requires at minimum Java 7 to run with the probe. So since Omnibus 7.4, Omnibus version below 8.1 is shipped with Java 6. So it is not being able to run the socket Java probe out of the box. But moving forward, this is the direction of the socket interface support, which is we are going to focus on development of the socket Java probe. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, so
No. Go ahead, Jim. I see you were showing some of the different properties files in the probes.
yeah, from what it does behave slightly differently, but it's essentially the same features. So the native, I think, wasn't there threading difference between the two probes as well? Wasn't that one of the main differences? I think the native one is only single threaded or something. No, both multi-threaded, aren't they? Multi-headed. But the processing was slightly different from what I remember. There's two processes, isn't there? There's the native process and the head, essentially, for the socket Java probe. So that's one of the differences. So it's not all in one process. Yeah, so it's a J probe essentially. So it's like any other non-native probe.
Yeah. So yeah, all Java probe, all Java-based probe will have a link to the NCO_J probe script. It's basically a script.
Yeah. So it would be running on two threads. So that's one of the differences, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You'll have one writing to the object server and the other one dealing with the sockets. Mm-hmm. If it's listening. Otherwise, well, even then it's split across two processes, isn't it? Or it can be split across two processes. Because the old one was just a straightforward binary.
Yes, I've had some tickets on customers migrating over to the socket Java, and I've seen better performance with it.
Okay. If you've got the CPU, it should be better. Yeah, if you've got the number of CPUs or the number of cores, it should behave better. But I've had other customers who preferred the native one. But I guess it's a matter of preference and how much memory you give it and how much CPU you give it. And the GLF, I don't think I've got GLF in there. Or maybe I have.
I do have one other question from Tomas about the Nokia NetAct probe. Also, the Nokia NetAct probe is JMS, is the replacement, and also what's the replacement for the Alcatel 5620? That's two different probe questions.
I didn't quite catch the gist of that again.
There was a question also, the Nokia NetAct probe is JMS?
JMS? No, it's a 3GPP, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 3GPP probe. It's a COBA probe.
Unless it's a different EMS.
And Alcatel 5620 is a JMS probe.
The Alcatel SAM. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a JMS probe. But what was the question though?
I'm not sure, Tomas, if you had any question about those. We still have an Alcatel 5620 probe with 5620 SAM. I don't know what current version you're running.
They did do a roll up, didn't they? At one point, they rolled up all the versions. So I think we only do a V10 at the moment, or downloadable as a V10. But I think that one supports down to. I'd have to check the support site to be honest. But the SAM, I think it covers all the support, all the Alcatel supported versions. If you get what I mean. So the versions of the probe should support all the supported Alcatel versions. It's like the Java roll-up is the reason why we're moving the Java up is because of the lack of support with the Java version 1.6. It's not because IBM have decided to move it, it's because of the vendors have decided to no longer support their products. So that's one of the questions that came up when we were discussing earlier, wasn't it? What version of Java is used by the Omnibus or the probes? And we did a quick find, and you can see it uses. It's using the 1.7 version. And that's one of the reasons why we're moving, or encouraging people to move up to the Netcool Omnibus 8.1. But there's loads of benefits, one of which is the install manager. Was there anything else? Nobody asked me about the M-trap probe. That's always, but there's no change with the actual functionality of the probes. I don't think there's any changes. It's just that if you have a very old system, you'll find there's more work to be done essentially when you migrate up to 8.1. Because there's been work along the way as functionality and behavior has been consolidated into generic probes. I think I covered the Ericsson probe. We no longer do that, but you could try and use the generic 3GPP probe, which covers most of the alarms. It doesn't cover all the alarms, but it covers most of the alarms. There's probes like the Ericsson OSS probe, OSSRC.
There is one question. I need to use the probe Tandem probe 5.1, but it's not available. The only one that is version 5. Where I get a version 5.1. So that would be a test fix release.
Sounds like.
Yes, it sounds like it. So if you need a test fix, open a PMR, and we can help you get the later version. It looks like there's probably a test fix that was given to you, probably in an older PMR. So we can look at getting you the latest test fix version for the probe.
Yeah, it's best to have if you were using the 7.4 test fixes, it's better to have the zip file rather than trying to manually do it. You can do it, but it's a bit of a pain. And obviously, then you get into the area of whether it's when you try and remove it or whether it's supported or not. So if you do have test fixes, then just ask support for them for 8.1, for the 8.1 version of Netcool Omnibus. So with a test fix, if you're on 5.1, if you installed 5, for instance, and you realise you have and you realise you need 5.1, you then have to remove the 5 to install the 5.1 test fix, and you'd use the uninstall method shown earlier. It's fairly straightforward. You get none of this lock-in or problems with the install manager with Netcool Omnibus 8.1. Okay, anything else?
If there's any other questions, just put them in the chat.
I know I've put some stuff into the Java, but I think all this is all exactly the same as it used to be. So the same structure. The core build. It's all basically the same stuff. I suppose if you have an earlier version of the probes, you might not be using the Jacob stuff. Might still be using VisiBroker for some of the probes, or even the IBM Corba. That's one of the other major changes, I think, in terms of latest releases. But it's all basically the same, isn't it? There's no difference from 7.4. So the only change with the message bus was the wrapper, wasn't it? They didn't really change much. They just rewrapped it and added a few more enhancements to it.
Yes, it just has new functionality added to it, so the message bus probe can be used with webhooks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was additional features, wasn't it?
Yes. So if you have any cloud monitoring solutions, the message bus probe is our main probe for retrieving events from other cloud monitoring.
Was that everything put in Java, was it? Yeah. Yeah, webhooks. Yeah, there you go. Sockets. It's a Cisco APEC one. Yeah, so that's some of the additions.
I think the webhook support will only come out with the new message bus probe version that, if I'm not mistaken, will be released by 23rd November, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's not out yet. Okay. Yeah, it's version 4.
But actually, it does not stop the existing probe from supporting webhook interface. Only that the probe, the existing probe is only able to support the URL path, as in its root path. So, yeah, with the web support, the enhanced webhook support in message bus probe, user is now able to specify a more customized URL to be registered with the webhook services. So, yeah, there will be additional property for webhook support in the newer message bus probe.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, shall we close it off? I see it hitting the hour.
Yes, we don't have any other questions. Kelsey, can you close it off?
Yes. Thanks everyone for attending. We will have the recording and the slides available tomorrow, so stay tuned for a follow-up email with a link to download those. That should come through tomorrow. And as you exit, if you can take a few moments to fill out our post-event survey, that would be great. And that concludes everything for today. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Jim, and everyone else on the line that joined today. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.
That's great. Thanks for attending.